welcome!
Where are we? What's going on?
We are, as usual, entranced by our own opening. I'm Amy Dallen, this is Matt Key, and who joins us today?
I'm Squirrel Girl.
Certainly not my wife.
I'm not nepotism incarnate. I'm Brittany Wallach.
Excuse me, I would have demanded you be on the show.
In fact, Nay, you did. You texted me and said, hey, bring your wife to our show. She loves Squirrel Girl.
I think I asked if you would want, I was like, does she want to come?
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. When I heard you wanted me, I definitely wanted to come.
Yeah, if I had asked, she would have been like, baby, it's your show.
Yeah.
But I was like, Amy asked, look, here's the text. She's like, I want to do that. That sounds fun.
Thank you.
So we are sadly Taliesin-less today, which is why we have pushed our planned. I know last week we said we were going to do Comics 101 this week, and then we checked the calendar, and it occurred to us that we wanted all three of us here for our big intro to comics thing, which, as Sam DeLev pointed out, gave them an extra week to track down Scott McCloud. I'm revisiting mine. It's okay. You don't have to finish the whole thing, but wow, it's real good. There's a reason we keep telling people to read that book.
I went back to it also and was like, oh yeah, I remember the good feelings from this. Oh yeah. So
I went wildly down sometimes you freak out about something where you're like, there's no place for me to put this freak out. But the first chapter
That's the story of my
book,
life.
and I don't think I'll get into this next week, so I'm gonna hijack the beginning of this show for it. The first chapter of Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, there is an astounding panel at the bottom right hand of each 2 pages. There is a perfect page turn. If you go back and look, he will either do a let's explore the universe, or he will do a bam, I just threw a fact at you. Let it settle in as you turn a page. I was like, I can't be an accident, and I started to look at the bottoms of the left side pages, and they're just panels. It's not like there are bad panels, but...
How's it going?
Hi,
Dax.
So we're having a sync issue with some of the audio, which we've been having intermittently the last couple of days. We don't know exactly what's causing it somewhere on the Twitch side. So we're going to take Twitch offline for just a sec.
Okay.
Come right back.
Okay.
And that should be fixed.
Yay!
Enjoy.
We'll see you soon.
But,
see you in a second, bye!
But keep
Lighthearted stuff, and then we get into Berserk and Preacher.
I'm so glad you brought those.
2 sides of a very same coin that I am, dark and light.
You're such a Gemini.
That is my sign.
No,
How do you know that? We're not married.
I did some research. I've been stuck in Facebook.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that's my sneak preview. That's what I think is funny.
Yeah, I remember when you and I first started dating. I remember looking at like your sign. I was like, I wonder if Geminis and Libras are compatible. And it was like, they're the most compatible. And I was like, well, I don't believe in that stuff, but that's good to know.
Now they're being adorable.
Yeah.
While you were gone.
Hi, Twitch.
It just got adorable.
Hey, everybody. Are we back? We're back 100%?
Yay.
Thank you, Sax!
Thanks, Sax.
We don't have a monitor, but other than that, everything is great. Hello!
Hi again.
Hi, we're back.
We did a sneak
missed
preview
you.
of what we're seeing, and one vitally important thing that must be repeated. What are you wearing?
Oh.
Not in a creepy way.
It's gonna get
not
weird
when I say it, right?
So I'm wearing
It's creepy when her husband
my
says it.
Black Milk Squirrel Girl exclusive. It was only available for a day.
I didn't even know this existed!
A very good friend of mine bought it for me, and I'm gonna wear it for the show. So I'm casual.
You're so good at showing
I'm
up.
so sexy. So that's my casual Squirrel Girl, and I love your shirt. I want people to see your shirt too. It's so cool.
It is
And
a
of course,
very cool
huge
shirt.
thanks to Ken
Yeah.
Wynn.
This is awesome.
Ken Wynn is the
So
best.
cool.
And absolutely beautiful tippy toe up there.
Tippy toe, man. It is winter. You are packing in some right there.
Tippy toe is well taken care of.
Oh, she's fine. All right.
So we're going to talk about a lot of different comics that make us laugh
Real
today.
quick, I want to say that DeLevely said that they saw Brittany's cosplay at WonderCon.
Oh, hi.
Excellent. DeLovely is Sam. Sam DeLev.
Yay.
Oh,
Sam.
hi! I didn't
Bringing
know
it
that.
up.
Sam
We love you,
DeLove.
Sam.
We love Sam DeLove.
Yeah.
But Amy.
So we went off while I was just talking about the fantastic page turns in Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. Go check it out and see how intentional and brilliant it is, and how he makes complex subject matter readable by putting really intriguing or thought-provoking things right at the point where you have to pick it up and turn it. And I'm just real fascinated by that.
Cool.
So,
That really is so cool. I mean that. That's fascinating to me. That
and the book is called Comics: The Invisible Art, and I love that I've literally read it before and didn't notice anything weird about it. And it's like, 'cause it's an invisible art.
Fickle Fandom says that your Squirrel Girl outfit is amazing.
Thank you. Very much.
And I love this because I had not realized, but one of my very favorite things about reading the Squirrel Girl book is that the letters column will have cosplay in it. And unfortunately, I don't have the right one. I'm going to do some examples here of I didn't realize that because I've been reading it in the single issues, and normally when you collect things into a larger volume, you don't print the backup material and some other stuff. But they've made an exception for the absolutely wonderful letters columns on Squirrel Girl. So you'll get things like this, where you have adorable chillins.
So cute. This is Tippy Toe inside the hand of Iron Man, which I think is an early issue. It turns into her sort of rocket, and it shoots her off. So someone made that. I think that's incredible.
Yep. Yeah. And I wish I had the right one here because I didn't realize it was you.
I submitted myself a photo of myself as Squirrel Girl taking a selfie with my best friend Jack, who's dressed as Dr. Doom, covered in squirrels from the famous issue where she defeats Dr. Doom. And
her first appearance. She immediately shows up and takes Dr. Doom down with squirrels.
We took a selfie together, and I submitted it, and they immediately got back to me. Were so nice. As if I wasn't a fan before, I became twice the fan I was, because they were very nice to me, very personal. Oh, no problem, we'll get it in. And yeah, it appeared, and I was like, I bought every issue I could find, and I totally forgot it today. I'm sorry. But anyway, if you guys look, issue 7, we realized, of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, you'll find me in the back. So... yeah.
So we're going to talk about a bunch of different kinds of comics that make us laugh, or that have funny moments in them, or unexpected funny sides. But we did decide in advance that we will be devoting a big chunk of this to what you are quite outnumbered by rabid Squirrel Girl fans.
I love Squirrel Girl. I'm just not caught up on the comics, but I loved her in Great Lakes Avengers, and I've loved the comic books. I just haven't caught up.
Yeah.
So a quick primer: who is Squirrel Girl?
Squirrel Girl. Original or current? I'm gonna go for at least the current one that I know.
Yeah. Tell her sort of if you pick up a Squirrel Girl issue, what is she like? And then I'll get a little bit into how did she get there.
And we're talking about the current run that's Ryan North and Erica Henderson.
Correct. Yeah, we will shout out forever to the run being written by Ryan North and drawn by Erica Henderson with guests at various points. Which has been just astounding. Those who caught my signal boost already know my feelings on this subject.
It was so I love doing Signal Boost because I always learn something new, and I loved doing your episode because I had no idea that North had done webcomics before. And when you were like, he does webcomics, I was like, of course he does.
Well, and that's the trajectory of Ryan North is fascinating to me as well because he's been one of my favorite writers for a long time, but I watched sort of the incredibly sharp-eyed editor Shannon Waters over at Boom was the one who picked him up to do Adventure Time comics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Made the connection no one else, where she was sort of...
But now she might not be a mutant.
The official stance of the current run seems to be, doesn't matter, hand wave, it's none of the things you think it is, don't think about it.
Exactly, yeah. I'm saying mutant, that's how I go with it. But yeah, she has the powers of squirrels, she can talk to all sorts of animals, squirrels mostly. She has her little friend Tippy Toe, who's her sidekick. And at her heart, at her core, she's just a really great person. She's a good friend. She's loyal. She is a harsh fighter, and she's intense when she kicks and punches. And the violence comes out, but it doesn't start that way. She's actually quite diplomatic in the way that she speaks to people, and she'll talk her way out of fights sometimes. That's how her defeat of Galactus came about, is they became friends. It was a great comic. You guys need to read it. But she's just a good character, and she's funny. Again, she's loyal to her friends, and even when it really comes down to hard things, she always does the right thing in her heart. So
there's striking a balance on Squirrel Girl right now where you can take the story seriously and the consequences matter, but it always stays fun. It stays fun to read, and she relentlessly optimistic characters can be difficult to write, but she's this version of just sort of no, we're gonna figure it out, we just don't know how yet.
Exactly. And on top of it all, I love the way Erica Henderson draws her. And I try and stay away from the word real girl, because all girls comes in shapes and sizes. Right. I'm real, you're real, we're all real. But I feel like I can relate a bit more to her size and relate a bit more to her style. And she's got this good... She's self-proclaimed. She's got a great badonkadonk. So
it's her tail.
It's her tail in her pants. But you know what I mean? You don't see body types like that often drawn in comics. And her teeth are a little messed up. Her hair's a little all over the place, but she still loves herself and never is down on her body, which is great. I don't think I've seen a single panel where she looks in the mirror is like, oh, I feel bad about myself today. Like, I think it's awesome.
It's just not a thing for her.
No.
Which
Yeah.
it's like, it's great to read stories that sort of examine those insecurities, but it's also fun to read about someone who's just like, well,
I am who I am.
I'm the shape I am.
Yeah, she's
like,
and celebrates it too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like about her too is that like so oftentimes like when you have like a female in comics and she's a smart female, it's like she's a nuclear physicist and all this other
She's
stuff.
like an
And
exception. She's like
like and they're kind of like that's kind of relatively inaccessible to be like, oh, I want to go into science, but I'll never be a nuclear physicist. She's
a computer
science
science
major.
major.
Which
Like,
I love. I believe is a Ryan North edition, just because Ryan North is a computer science guy.
That's
he has a
awesome.
degree in linguistics, and he does
Oh, of
like
course he does.
He hand
This
coded a
guy
bunch
would
of
be-
stuff for like early webcomic stuff, and he was just like, that would
Look
be
at that,
cool.
yeah.
And then like it's such a perfect fit because she's all about creative solutions
Mm-hmm.
to things, and like just runs around with it being totally normal that she's
Yeah.
studying computer science, and
And
computer
sometimes
science
she
is rad.
can sometimes outsmart Tony Stark in his own stuff thanks to her teaching. And her best friend's a girl too who's in the same class. So you like back to what you were saying about females in exceptionally smart roles. There's usually just one of them,
Yeah.
or they're in competition with another girl. There's never really a friendship bond there. So it's just it feels real to me. This feels like as silly as that sounds. I think Squirrel Girl is one of the most real comics I've ever read, in spite
Yeah.
of her having a bushy tail.
The boy, the dating mole man stuff. Whoever thought you could get so many real feelings about
Right.
like human life and tribulations
Right.
from a story where Mole Man is trying to make Squirrel Girls date him?
Yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for that, guys. Thanks for that, Ryan
I'm going
and
to admit
Erica.
that I haven't read that, and I want to hear more about that.
he's full on milady.
Oh yeah.
What?
Oh yeah.
It's-
Mole Man is a
You know what?
lady?
No. He's a
But, like-
mole lady.
Oh my god!
But like
Comedy.
it's adorable because they never stop, even though he is just doing bonkers things. They never stop treating him with empathy. It's this
So
like,
he's not
how
just
are you
he's
pulling
not
this off?
two-dimensional in himself.
I mean, he's a hilarious cartoon of a person, but he also comes off as a fully fledged human, and I don't know how they did that. I'm looking for this cover.
You know who gets really good responses too? Just from, this is going to sound really egotistical, but when I was Squirrel Girl at WonderCon recently, you do kind of get like, I've been lucky enough to cosplay many times in my life, and every character gets a different response. Sometimes it's, oh my gosh, or sometimes
my
it's
God,
scary. Oh, that's
There we
great.
go.
There you go. Mole lady.
Oh my god! Oh my
And in his
This is
defense,
so
like
great.
he is 100 years old.
Yeah. So
Oh
he's the
my-
original mole lady.
And I love to look in her in the glasses, the reflection of her, just like
Yeah.
what? Oh
But,
god, that's so good.
The reaction I got when I was cosplaying Squirrel Girl it's so positive. It was so like delighted, and especially from little girls. So I was really happy to see, even in the microcosm that was my day at WonderCon, I got to see what little girls thought of Squirrel Girl. I just thought that was really cool.
That's
So,
fantastic, and that's
yeah.
an element. I haven't really done cosplay, so I never
You'd
thought about
be
like that you
great.
get to see how everybody
You
reacts
do
to
it.
you.
You could totally borrow my costume. It probably fit you better. It probably fit you way better. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm making that promise. Like,
can't steal
and
your
the chat
costume.
has to keep me to it.
But I also
so-
can't promise to give it back, so you should probably not load it to me.
Okay.
Our Kimsia says, question, sorry if I missed it, but where should one start reading Squirrel Girl?
For once, there's an easy answer to this. I love those very rare moments in comics. You probably want to begin at the beginning of the run we are talking about that
Great
Ryan
Lakes
North
Avengers.
writes.
No.
Ryan North is the writer. Erica Henderson is the artist. The volume, and it can be confusing because if you were buying in the monthlies, they went back and renumbered partway through the run.
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
haven't done that with the trades. The trade paperbacks, they're keeping the numbering going, so you don't have to worry about that midway through kind of renumber thing. But it's The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Volume 1. It has a funny subtitle. It might be Squirrel Power. They all have squirrel jokes.
Oh, gotcha.
Because Volume 4 is I Kissed a
remember.
Squirrel and I Liked it. Volume 5 is Squirrel, You Know It's True. No, Volume 5 is Like I'm the Only Squirrel in the World. I think Volume 3
They're
is Squirrel,
so
You Know It's
good.
True.
They're so funny.
Hey guys, I got a surprise for you.
We got a
Oh.
surprise.
Oh.
Is there a squirrel here?
Oh,
Zach!
So there I am for
And the
at my
Squirrel
birthday
Girl.
party with my friend Jack, my best friend Jack. He surprised me with that costume, and it was a really great night.
And that,
Yeah.
that was a homemade,
that was awesome.
Jack homemade that
it was
costume.
ridiculous. It was so great.
And by the way, Jack is in our chat.
Oh, hi Jack.
Hey, Jack!
He's Drinky Jack in the
Yay.
chat. Drinky Jack.
I'm sorry for embarrassing you. But seriously, that was
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah. So
actually,
yeah.
that's a good segue into the sort of history of Squirrel Girl, and we are going to telescope out into other stuff. But I really enjoy these deep dives.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually said it. Squirrel Girl is a Marvel character, and she previous to you should start reading from the Ryan North run because it's a perfect beginning that will introduce you to all the things that we love about her. The Ryan North and Eric Henderson run. But she had been around before that, and she had this status as kind of like an in-universe in-joke.
Yeah.
Writers love to use her, but she had made, only, by comic book standards, a handful of appearances.
Yeah.
She had shown up in the early 90s, 92, I think.
I think you're correct.
I want to say that, and I think it was X-Men, Avengers, and it was a giant-size X-Men comic, I think number 2 or something like that.
It was one of those just
80-page
such and such
spectacular,
special.
Ways, yeah.
It was an oversized issue that you pack with extra stories just for the fun
I know
of it.
because I've looked to try and buy it for you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
And there was a short story in the back that introduced this character, co-created by Steve Ditko.
So
Your
funny
own
story.
Steve Ditko.
My favorite character, Doctor Strange, introduced in a small 6-page backstory by Steve Ditko.
30 years before.
Crazy.
Her favorite character, the exact same.
And yet, kind of.
You're leaving him
we're
hanging.
we're not married. I can't high five you.
That's on camera now.
I'll give you a high five.
Nope.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh.
Nope.
So
I can be
Amy,
sassy too.
Yeah, she has 2 hours he has 2 hours to win her love.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to
I
watch
better go
this.
get a fedora.
But
Really?
even still, that sort of Steve Ditko kind of LSD, sort of wah, 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 I don't even know how to put it into words other than sound effects, didn't really go with Squirrel Girl. I don't really.
Yeah, so
she didn't really have this sort of
He's a legendary creator, but this was not one of those obvious success out
No,
the gate
yeah.
things. There was a
she had,
character
the creepy,
she could
clown makeup for
she
a
had
time.
weird clown
Yeah.
makeup. She could talk to squirrels, and she somehow beat Doctor Doom.
Yes.
Yep.
In her first appearance, in a random backup story,
After
of
he
book whose name
after
we can't
he
even remember.
Murdered Monkey Joe. Just gonna put that out there. He
Wait,
crushed Monkey Joe. That's how he
Monkey
died.
Joe was around.
He was in Great Lakes
Were those
Avengers,
flashbacks?
wasn't he?
I think it might have been flashbacks. I'm pretty sure there's a scene, at least in I've had nightmares about it, about him crushing Monkey Joe. You hear this little
Warning,
and-
kids,
yeah.
having animal companions can be a recipe for heartbreak.
hazardous sometimes, but that's
Like
where
in real
Tippy Toe
life.
came from. Yeah. Chat, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dr. Doom is the one that took Monkey Joe's little life.
So because there was this completely ridiculous character who had taken down one of the all-time legendary Marvel villains in her first appearance, her appearances since then tended to play on the joke of that she was for some reason just powerful beyond all reason.
Yeah, no one could figure it out.
That she could take down any threat that came her way. I one of the first things I remember reading from her was, and this is past yours, I think, but because I didn't ever read the Great Lakes Avengers in the
Oh my
original
god,
run.
I love the Great Lakes Avengers so
They're
much.
very funny.
Which was a sort of a team of misfit heroes, which is
Big
probably the
Bertha.
thing they're going to be drawing closer on for this new Warriors show,
series,
if I
yeah.
had to
Yeah.
guess. Do you want to talk a little about the Great Lake Avengers?
A bit.
'Cause I'm going to get
Oh
into
my
the
god.
Avengers.
Oh my god. The Great Lakes Avengers. All right. I read a little bit of it last night just to remind myself of how much I love this book. Oh my god, they've already made a gif of you not high-fiving me.
Yes! Amazing!
Good work, chat. Way to remind me of how much I'm not loved by my wife.
You can still turn it around. I believe in you.
We've got 2 hours. We're good. Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, it's only an hour and a half. I'm gonna lose. So Great Lakes Avengers. I can't remember exactly where they started, but I know that they came out around, I think, Disassembled, so early 2000s. And it was this guy named Mr. Immortal, who
His only power.
so Mr. Immortal, interesting character, befriended a demiurge of death when he was a child because his mother his mother died during childbirth. This demiurge that he calls Deurge came to take her away, and as he was doing so, she said, "But he's," and you don't know that that's what's going on when it starts, and she's saying, "Just please promise me that you'll watch after him since I have to leave." And he's like, "I promise I will." And then she takes him away, and then you see the husband outside just crying as the doctor's like, "I'm so sorry, we did all we could." And then there's little baby Mr. Immortal. So I think Caulfield or something like that.
This doesn't sound hilarious yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know. So this kid has this imaginary friend growing up. This actual demiurge of death who is constantly putting him in danger because he can't die because he's there.
But he's
like
still
death is there to keep him from dying.
But he still goes through the death motions, as in being lit on fire, being run over by trucks. Like,
his dad ends up like getting mad at him. He's like, "Who's this imaginary friend that keeps putting you in danger?" Like, no more imaginary friends. Then his dad ends up dying in a house fire that was started by the kid accidentally. It's really off.
Again, hilarious.
Hilarious. So what ends up happening is as he grows older, he realizes that this demiurge has accidentally kind of given him this, he can't die. Now, he will, like, if you shoot him in the head, he gets shot, he falls down, he has to heal, so he's dead for like a minute, but then he wakes back up and he's like, oh, God, that hurt. Oh, why can't I die? And that's where it goes.
A Deadpool quality
there. The
there.
whole team is sort of like that in a way that they all have very strange, like Bertha and, is it Flatman?
Yeah, there's Flatman. So yeah, Mr. Immortal is like, there he is. He is the worst hero ever because like at least Deadpool has like fighting acumen. Yeah. He has like, if you chop his arm off, he can keep running.
He's a really good marksman.
Like Mr. Immortal, he goes down. Like if you chop his arm off, he's like, this really hurts.
Yep.
You know, then he comes back like an hour later. So he's virtually no help on any fight. Then there's, like you said, Flatman.
Who's just, his art is just like very flat.
Yeah, he's like two-dimensional, so if he turns to the side, you can't see him.
Yeah.
So there's a few jokes about that where people are talking, and then all of a sudden, out of the frame, he'll just turn and be like, hey guys, what you doing? They're like, you were here the whole time?
You've been here the whole time.
Because he's two-dimensional, there he is at the very bottom.
So funny.
But he's very much like Mr. Fantastic. Dinosaur is her name, and she has she's basically a humanoid pterodon. That's basically it. The dude in the background with the black, that is Doorman. He can create a portal. He's basically one just like gigantic walking portal. There's one scene where a lady's like accidentally locked her dog in the car, and he's like, "I'll get her," and he like reaches in his chest and pulls her out by because he opens a portal into the car, grabs the dog.
That's a pretty good power.
He's the only one. And Big Bertha.
He's like a walking bag of holding.
That's
it's
a good way to put it. Big Bertha is a character who is a supermodel by day, and she's like the supermodel. I think her name is like Cindy Shepard or something like that.
And then
Cindy
becomes
Sheridan.
Kind of like a very strong.
She can basically Hulk out. She's like Bruce Banner. But instead of being like getting really big and muscly, she just turns into like
the Blob,
2,000 pounds of flab, and is super strong and giant.
So these characters, I think, actually were mostly created in 1989 by John Byrne in an early incarnation, maybe long before they had their own book.
But because of their misfit adventures, I think it's really funny. And Squirrel Girl would be a great addition to.
And then in 2005, they got their own mini-series.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm the more familiar with.
Written by Dan Slott.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right, Dan Slott. And it's very, very, it's a fantastically funny book. So I fell in love with it, and Squirrel Girl comes in later, and is just like basically the only actual kind of hero on the team because everyone else is so screwed up. They can't do anything, and she'll be like, guys, come on, we've got to go do this thing, and they'll be like, well, first we've got to fix our car, you know how it is, and she's like, screw it, I'm taking a cab, I'm going on my own. You know, and she ends up saving the world by herself basically because these guys can't get their act together. So it's a great book.
After that, I think the next big place that she shows up, or at least for me, this is where I ran into her, was in the pages of Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers, when Luke Cage and Jessica Jones need a nanny,
need a babysitter,
and so it's just this sort of background gag appearances in a couple of different issues as they're interviewing everybody else. But in that case, they're playing her sort of weird invulnerable quality, not actually invulnerable, but that's the. Yeah, I guess somebody relentlessly positive and totally undefeatable would be an excellent choice for caretaker of your baby.
It's a great page, too, of all the faces of people they're interviewing. Rejected.
Babysitter interviews.
People are you kidding? And then the very
end.
I think
Wolverine is in there, what?
Yeah, I feel like he's almost right before Squirrel Girl, and there's this cute little panel of her just I'll do it. I just love it. And I feel like that was, how many years before Unbeatable? That was the last time we saw her in that costume.
That was like what, 2008, 2009 that Bendis was doing the Avengers, or was it later than that?
He did them for so long.
I know, he really did.
I'm gonna say maybe 2011ish.
Yeah, I feel like that was the last time we saw her in that particular costume, at least, and then it became.
And then she got
Erica
cool
Henderson.
jacket.
And the cool thing is that like all these different appearances
There we go.
Oh, that's cute.
play
There
to
it
her
is.
abilities in different ways. But it was when Ryan and Erica took over the book that they sort of took this quality of like winning fights she shouldn't win, and they made it a character trait where it's not just that she punches harder than anyone in the universe, but that like she keeps finding ways to win through creativity, empathy, optimism, and
She even fights
and
herself
punching
at one
sometimes.
point. She fights a clone of herself, and that particular clone chooses a different path, and she has this really like difficult internal external struggle with this clone that is her.
Would you
Isn't
recommend
her?
that as a starting point? Because that's the OGN, right? The graphic novel that they did. Squirrel Girl
I
beats
would-
up the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, gosh, that's such a great book. No, because I feel like they were referencing things that were in the run prior to
Her
that.
regular volume 1 of her solo title is a perfect beginning.
And
like,
then jump into beats up the Marvel Universe, because I feel like there were characters in there that they referenced as if you already knew who they were. So I do recommend reading these first.
let me look for, because we've made reference to this, but we haven't shown any examples yet.
And if you guys are not following Erica Henderson on Twitter, by the way, I highly recommend it. I feel like Erica Henderson is Squirrel Girl. She's funny, and she's got great insight to the way she writes, and she's just a great Twitter person to follow in general. She's got some great tweets.
So the text we were talking about, and this is a thing I love that they do in these comics, that Ryan North did in his Adventure Time run, and that I think is officially an outgrowth of, for webcomics readers, mouse over text became a thing for a lot of webcomics because you get a bonus second joke, essentially. And so a lot of, like, he particularly excels at the comedic rhythms of, I've already told my main thing, but I also have a funny thing to say about it.
That little thing I want to say.
Yeah.
He, like, whispers it at the bottom.
Which it turns out makes for a wonderful reading experience. I'm going to lift it here.
The very bottom.
On the bottom of the screen here, you will often have commentary or a secondary joke, or at one point when they had a crossover with Howard the Duck, there was a conversation between the two creators happening in the bottom of the book.
Yeah.
And you can read the events without it, but for instance, like, there's one in here where Mole Man talks about, indeed, I have plenty of skeletons in boxes already, Surface World. I assure you, my needs for weird skeletons in boxes have been well met for the foreseeable future. Thank you kindly. And the commentary at the bottom is, ew, Mole Man. Ew. Like,
Do you ever read the whole thing and then go back and look at those, or do you do it
I
at the same
sometimes
time?
I do it one way and sometimes I do it another.
Yeah.
Like, there are certain sequences where I get all the way through and then I realize I've missed the bottom because I
same.
was so engaged, and there are other times where I check it like as if I'm having a conversation the whole
The
time.
tones sometimes tend to be so different that I like to read the entire thing and then go back and be like, oh, here's the secret jokes.
I'm the same way, because I feel like the text at the bottom sometimes like gets me out of the pace of the narrative.
A little bit, yeah.
So like I because the first couple comics of those I read, I was like, oh, this is really clever. I like this. And then I was like, wait, what was the story? Like,
Yeah.
So I had to go back and kind of reread those.
Yeah, cool.
I'm,
Have we covered Squirrel Girl pretty well, guys?
Nope,
I think we're good.
not yet.
Should we
Not yet.
discuss her dietary needs and her...
Question: the volumes that collected comics, do they include the fan cosplay pictures? That's from Parishnikov.
I have
think
just
they do.
learned for the first time that they do.
Yeah,
There's
they
also
do.
pictures of actual squirrels in most of these.
Yeah.
People send in pictures of their adorable children with the books, of their adorable squirrels, of people in costumes. The letters columns for Squirrel
They're
Girl
great.
are a national treasure.
They're really great, and they have really thoughtful responses. You can tell it's not just like an intern or a computer. Really thoughtful, well written responses to everybody,
This,
which
I
just
believe,
makes
is
me love them even more.
Artist Erica Henderson with a Squirrel Girl cosplayer. In the center here. That's the center.
Cute.
I should make it flatter. There we go. Nope. Learning process.
Yeah, so they love their fans. They're very kind. Again, I don't know them personally, but just the few interactions I've had with them, it have been very positive. So total support, total fan
So
girl.
let me ask you this: what makes Unbeatable Squirrel Girl more of a funny book or a humor book than an action adventure or anything else? Like, or is it perfectly balanced? Like, how would you parse that out?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a superhero book, but like it's a superhero book. Is this comparable, or is it like the way Hitchhiker's Guide is science fiction.
Yeah.
That also happens to be funny.
Yeah, that just makes you laugh like crazy.
Yeah,
like Hitchhiker's Guide is more overtly about like if you had a sliding scale from I am reading this for the voice to I am reading this to follow the story. Hitchhikers would be further over here, even though you love those characters and care about them. And like a humorless but very engaging story would be over here, and Squirrel Girl would be like in the middle. I
feel
guess.
the exact same.
The voice of the world is there, and it happens to be hilarious.
I don't read it because it's funny. I'm not looking to it for like, oh, I'm gonna read this because it's gonna make me laugh. I do it for both. I do it because I know I'll laugh, and I also want to keep up with her and want to know that story.
I think if I like to throw this out there, like I think that it's more her the tone of the book and the character, because like going off the example that you gave with Hitchhiker's Guide. That's really not about the characters at all. Like the jokes aren't coming from the characters; the jokes are coming from the absurdity of the universe.
I guess that could be argued either way.
It could be argued, like yes, but like I think for the most part they live in this absurd universe.
And these situations they find
that they find themselves in, and the situations play larger than the characters. Not that the characters aren't great or well developed.
Doreen herself is funny to me.
Doreen Green herself is a comical character.
Yeah, I can see that.
Is a realistic character also. Like I'm not saying she's just a one-off joke, but like she's a realistic character that these people have like that North and Henderson have like invested a lot of humanity into, and they've created not a one-off joke. She used to be like, she's a Squirrel Girl. How does she be Doctor Doom? Yeah. And now she's Squirrel Girl. Of course, that's how she be Doctor Doom.
She's charming. And I loved finding out how much the world was like excited to see her, even though it was gonna on the small screen, even though it's technically like a subscription service. We're not sure if we should be excited, but I liked how many people I didn't even know liked Squirrel Girl were like, yeah, she's finally getting her due. Like that's a good feeling to see her like popularity rise. So.
If you missed that, the announcement has just been made that a long hinted at television series may be coming.
New Warriors.
They're using the name New Warriors. It's very unclear if it's going to match any lineup of the New Warriors that Marvel fans would recognize. But they've confirmed that a lead character will be Squirrel Girl,
which is awesome. But
in
also
fact,
like,
the network people said that like they wore their hats to the pitch meeting, or like one of the women who works there wore her Squirrel Girl hat to the pitch meeting where they were like, we want it.
Oh, cool.
Give it to us.
That's good to know.
Like,
that's good.
That is awesome.
That's good
I hadn't heard that. Did you hear that with that series? I know we're not talking comic books right now. Just bear with us. It's comic book adjacent. With the series, they're actually planning all the characters that are in the series could have their own spin-off show. So
I mean,
I don't
that's
know
kind
if
of putting the horse before the cart, I guess.
But they're saying like they've designed it in that way,
That
which
it could be
makes me
modular.
think, Freeform is trying to take on the CW, but with Marvel shows instead of DC.
Well, if that
they
means,
also have Cloak and Dagger in the
That's true. If that means Squirrel gets her own, then I'm all for
My
it.
guess is that they're using this as a
Good.
backdoor pilot for a Squirrel Girl series on her own.
Cool.
And then she'll be on 2 shows.
All right.
Amazing. Okay, so we promised to talk about funny comics, and this one is obviously we came in with an agenda, and it was squirrel related.
Can you tell? Just a little.
I did actually. I asked you off the air, but I wanted to ask you on sort of like your origin as a comic book reader, and like I love that like you just like squirrels.
Actually, hilariously, I got into Squirrel Girl because I love squirrels, and that's I'll fully admit I found out about her on the internet when I was doing my little Wikipedia, like trying to teach myself
That's
about
what the internet is for.
Characters. Yeah, so I was like, oh, is there a character there's a Marvel character that likes squirrels, and she's a girl, she's kind of cute, but at the time it was long before Unbeatable came out, so she was just the joke, and I was like, oh, that's cute, but yeah, I'm not really gonna get too invested. That's very cute, but then I started to care about her as a person, as a character, once Ryan North and Erica Henderson took over. So yeah, that's my origin story, was the internet.
But you also
squirrels.
liked her doing Great Lakes Avengers. I remember you because that came out well before the Erica Henderson stuff, and we were reading that,
but I guess
and you liked her
finding
then,
out
too.
about her in the first place came from online.
Sure.
So, and just for the fact that she was a Marvel character that liked squirrels, I'd never heard anyone like that, and there hasn't really been anyone like that. I don't even know that there's a character based around other animals in the way she is. Like, I don't think there's like a mouse man. I could be crazy, or I don't think there's like a scorpion dude. You know, I don't think
there's Scorpion.
There should be, but you know what I'm trying to say.
He's got a tech suit more than anything.
But she's basically a furry.
All the powers of girl and squirrel.
Yes, exactly. But that's my origin story. Yeah.
Eat nuts, kick butts.
And we talked about your comic book fandom, much like mine, goes right back to the X-Men animated series.
Totally. That's where I got my fix. Yeah, that's where I got mine.
Question from the internet. Cat Cosplay says, does this current run of Squirrel Girl exist?
Wait, is this cat cosplay?
Cat cosplay.
Oh my gosh! If you are the cat cosplay that does all that dresses them up and did, oh my gosh, I love your stuff so hard. I'm fangirling so hard right now.
She does.
I love your stuff.
She does.
When you did the Critical Role ones, I didn't like. I was laughing. That's when I knew Mercer and Marusha had made it. When I was like, oh, you guys appear in all these magazines and these shows. But no, Cat Cosplay did it. Now you made it.
now you're celebrity.
So anyway, sorry. I'm super excited that Cat Cosplay's here.
Well, anyway, Cat Cosplay says, does this current run of Squirrel Girl exist in the 616?
I don't...
In what is known as the regular Marvel Universe, we talked last time about how it's a little bit unclear what we should be calling it right now. But she exists both in the Just Before Secret Wars version that was officially the 616 and in the version we have now that is post Secret Wars, kind of undefined, but definitely the main universe.
The main line continuity, yeah.
So, and it's a line that they walk where, like, she can handle ridiculous situations without taking gravity or seriousness away from other books because they're handling that balance so well internally to the book.
Cool.
There would be characters who would be weird to wander past, but for the most part, they handle like, there are different tones that are coexisting in one universe, which is...
Right.
And by the way, Obsidian Butterfly says that we should mention the Squirrel Girl sale on Comixology.
Thank you for finding that.
That's right.
I tweeted it out last night. There's I think it's a 66% off sale on all
awesome.
Squirrel Girl comics on Comixology.
That's a great deal.
So go get that.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. I know we have other books to talk about.
I suppose.
I could go on for hours, but I'll stop.
Wait, at a certain point, I was like, maybe we should have just said this is a Squirrel Girl episode.
Hey, I got a Doctor Strange episode. You should have a Squirrel Girl episode.
I do want to talk about other ones.
We will return to it. So we basically asked everybody to sort of pick their favorites. And I think just so that we don't not do them, I'm going to start with Talisin's picks.
Oh, yeah, Taliesin.
Okay. Hi, Taliesin. We miss you. We miss you, Taliesin.
So, Zach, I don't know if you were able to find it, but in terms of humor comics, one of the things Taliesin immediately shouted out was a run. Speaking of characters who can work in multiple tones, She-Hulk is a character who you can do totally straightforward superhero stories with, who you can tell like interesting legal drama stories with. And who also very famously had a run in the 1980s written and drawn by John Byrne, where she kind of was one of the pioneering characters for sort of fourth wall breaking humor and like satire in comics. And so there very famously there was a cover that I forgot to look up before we came. So you got it?
Of course Doom has it.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Love it.
The Sensational She-Hulk. Okay, kids, we had oh, this is the callback. Yes, excellent. This is a cover calling back to the original. There was a She-Hulk cover where she said essentially, "Buy my book, or I will come to your house and tear up your X-Men comics." And it was like at the time X-Men was the big hit, and she was just on the cover talking to you and demanding that you do this, or She-Hulk is gonna get like. Mean on you,
So,
and then that's the final issue where they call back where she's like, "All right, guys, we had a deal. Book's getting canceled. Bill comes due."
That's awesome. I love that. Good choice, Taliesin.
Was John Byrne drawing that at the same time he was drawing X-Men?
I think it was after he had finished his run on the X-Men. I would need to check on.
It's okay. I was just curious because that would be interesting if he was drawing both and he's like, "Yeah, well, screw my other book because this book is great." Like,
yeah, totally.
I mean, tongue in cheek, of course. He wasn't like, "Screw the X-Men."
No,
They're paying my bills. Like, I doubt he was saying that, but just interesting.
Actually, somebody do the math on those numbers because I want to stop and look it up, but I'm not
curious.
So that run had a lot of like famously. It wasn't a comedy book in the way that say Howard the Duck is. Oh, here we go. Sensational She-Hulk #1. Okay, now this is your second chance. If you don't buy my book this time, because this was the second time she'd had her own solo series, I'm going to come to your house and rip up all your X-Men. So she's holding a copy of the first time she had her own book, which did not last long. And this was the, like, you know, she's just like, "All right, guys, pay attention this time. I have my own book. You will buy it." Which is a fun comic book tradition that, like, when they did that renumbering for Squirrel Girl much later, they wrote on the second #1, our second #1 so far this year.
Making fun of it.
That self-awareness creeping into comics and being used for humor is a major element of funny comics.
I love that.
Like, a lot of the ones that we're going to talk about today fall into that heading.
Like even Howard the Duck, in a lot of ways was Steve Gerber saying this is ridiculous.
Comic books are crazy,
are insane. And we should
Master of Quack Fu,
which is a parody of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu.
So great.
A Marvel character.
So yeah, I mean, even going back to like Howard the Duck. In Howard the Duck, by the way, I didn't know this. Have you ever read the biography of Marvel Comics, like that giant tome?
No.
It's eye-opening in like the best way. It's just like, yeah, Marvel had like
the Sean Howe book, Marvel the Untold Story.
Yep.
I need to read that.
It's I'm only halfway through it right now, but it's so good. And they talk about how the editorial at the time had no control over their artists or writers. They were just like, because they were so busy writing their own books too. So everyone was just like, screw it, we're doing our thing. So Steve Gerber's like, I'm gonna do Howard the Duck, and everyone's like,
awesome. That
what?
Kind of freedom.
He's like, I'm just gonna do it. And they're like, all right, go do that.
Go for it.
And there's a story about how Howard the Duck became one of their highest like selling comics, and Stan Lee was still doing a lot of college tours at the time, and he was at a college and was still considered editor-in-chief in a lot of ways, or like the head of publishing or something like that. And he was at this, there we go. God, it's a really good book. It's really, really well researched.
Thank you.
Like I almost cried when Jack Kirby left Marvel and that, but like I knew it happened. But like the way it was written and the reaction of the Marvel offices and the firsthand accounts of what that day was like, I was like, oh my God, like it's heartbreaking just to hear like how much no one wanted that to happen.
We'll make. I know you've got a drinking game going for every time we say we should do an episode on that, but we should probably
do an episode on Kirby, yeah. But like, there's a story how Stan Lee is doing a college tour, and someone in the audience is like, "What do you think of Howard the Duck? When's Howard the Duck coming back?" or something like that. And he was like, "What's Howard the Duck?"
Because he had been on tour and didn't even realize
he was on tour. He had
great.
kind of pulled himself out of handling publishing and editorial directly, and when he found that out, he was like, WTF. I have no idea what this is. I didn't approve this. Who's doing this? He's like, of course it's Gerber. Like, of course it's Steve Gerber. Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
Anyway, yeah.
One of the all-time classic funny comics. Drawing on the older tradition of, like, funny animal comics were a huge, like, I cannot be overstated how big this genre was. Like, when you look at Golden Age comics and 50s comics, you had your westerns, you had the birth of romance, you had crime stories and horror stories that got sort of eviscerated when the Comics Code came in, and you had like a giant chunk of all comic book sales, which were funny animals, which were Carl Barks doing Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck, which were Dell Four Colors, that like really kept everything going. And so that they deserve their own shout out as part of a huge part of the history, because like. It's so funny. Like, this is the episode where you go, like, comics, funny books. They literally have the word comedy in them, and it's almost never relevant to what we're talking about. And this is the week that it is relevant. Because it's one of the most obvious and applicable things you can do in comics is make people laugh. You have caricature. You have, like, setups that are perfectly built for humor. So you were shouting out Calvin and Hobbes beforehand, like things where you grew up reading. Those are comics, too.
And comics are very much like, I mean, they're just like, one of the things that is in the Understanding Comics book by McLeod is the biggest difference between cartoons and comics is the fact that like cartoons are replacing the image sequentially, whereas comics can't do that. So like you have to, like, they use space the same way that cartoons use time. And it's interesting because that's literally the only difference. It's like you're reading it on paper and you can't place them in front of one another fast enough. So, and I mean that.
Or alternatively put, you control the flow of information.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's, but other than that, like you can draw whatever you want in a comic. So you can draw exaggerated, very cartoonish heads and hands and, you know, stuff like that. You know, like that's why you can have characters like Slapstick exist in the Marvel universe. He's literally a cartoon. He was a man who was dragged through thousands of various time, space, dimensions, and when he came back to his reality, he had been transformed into a cartoon because of it.
It's not a bad way to go.
You know, so he's literally a cartoon existing in our reality. Like he hangs with Deadpool a lot right now, I think. But God, can you imagine if they put him in the new Warriors TV series, like
just
that
how
would
silly
be
he would be.
bonkers.
He would be a really poorly CGI character, though. I think it would be really poorly animated.
Yeah,
like,
it would be weird. I don't
wow.
think they could ever pull that off.
He'd be like an infomercial.
Man, I would love to see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
He'd be like the cartoon bee for that like Claritin commercial or whatever.
Oh,
it was.
yeah, the horrible,
the weird cartoon
yeah.
bee. Anyway,
Speaking
sorry.
of people making use of
Milk
the
and cheese.
satiric properties of things, another of Taliesin's picks was just Dorkin, because Evan Dorkin has written a number of different very funny, and I was going to show off a page, but I was like, I need to check which pages I can show you. This is Milk and Cheese, Dairy Products Gone Bad. This is, Evan Dorkin is a writer-artist. They hate what you hate, and they hate you. These are sort of classic black and white humor strips that Evan Dorkin has done on and off over the years. He also has a series called The Eltingville Club, which is a pretty vicious take on geek culture. They did a two-parter recently, which was the last Eltingville Club story, and it's funny because like it was tough to read because he very accurately portrays some like bad nerd behavior in that book, but it also was like so sharply observed and so funny
and so true in a way. Yeah.
So
I would find myself relating and being like, "Ah, man."
Yeah,
Aw.
I was just like, it's just a rough reading experience, but also this is great.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Evan Dorkin is one of those like comics allows particular voices to flourish, especially in the case of writers who are also artists, who are just putting their own vision completely onto the page, whether it is silly, hyper-violent versions of Milk and Cheese, or like a detailed social commentary on nerd culture. So that was another of Taliesin's picks, and then he also got into. Taliesin and I and a bunch of people last night all suggested different works by Rumiko Takahashi, the manga author that we talk about a lot on here just because it happens to be one of our faves. And I was hoping that I had a physical copy to bring in and did not find it. But Taliesin's particular shout-out for that one is Urusei Yatsura, an early work by Rumiko Takahashi about sort of an alien lady who kind of comes and wreaks havoc everywhere she goes. And it's just... Rumiko Takahashi is another writer-artist and a person whose sense of humor just informs. Like, she also did Ranma 1/2, which is a martial arts, anything goes comedy, which involves everybody changing into different things when different, like hot water and cold water. So transformation and martial arts hijinks and gender-bending antics and all kinds of good, very funny stuff in there. And then she did Meisani Koku, which is basically a sitcom, kind of. It's about a hapless student who falls in love with his new apartment manager, and he wants to move out of his, like, because all his neighbors are crazy, but they're like a weird little crazy family, and he doesn't have the heart. Thank you for finding that.
So cute.
This is Lum, Urusei Yatsura. Urusei, usually when you're looking it up. Urusei Yatsura? Might be saying that wrong. I've never actually read that one in the original Japanese.
It sounds good. Your pronunciation is great to me.
Yeah, like as if I needed an excuse to love you more. Like I'm just like, I know nothing about what you're talking
And
about.
he's not married, so
Yeah, I'm not married for another hour.
Unencumbered, yeah.
So
speaking of manga,
we'll circle back around. I think Tal had one more pick, but we're jumping genres right now. So
as long as we're on the issue of manga, I'm gonna. This is man.
A hilarious.
People
book.
are the chat's gonna find out who I really am in about 10 seconds. So
Yeah,
one of my
you really are.
So excited.
favorite comedic mangas is a little book called Berserk. It's one of my personal favorites.
I have never read
Right
Berserk,
there.
and I'm very excited about
I
it.
am curious. I don't know enough about you to recommend it. I'll be honest.
I love Preacher.
Then you'll
kinda
probably
wish I
like
didn't,
this.
but like...
Berserk is I don't even know where to start. At its very core, it is a hyper-violent, gruesome fantasy story. And there are moments where you'll see these incredibly... I mean, Kentaro Miura is one of the most incredible artists. He's the only one that draws the three main characters as well as all these monsters. And when I say monsters, I mean monsters on monsters on monsters on monsters. Monsters had babies, and then the monsters had baby monsters. I mean, it's just ridiculous, like how detailed these are. And I would show certain panels from it, but they are all completely inappropriate. And yet you'll find these really gruesome panels where just people are being torn apart, intestines are the most beautiful gore you've ever seen. And then the next page, this little fairy will like, it'll fart, you know, like, oh, I'm making a fart, ha ha ha, I'm a fairy. Like, it's really, really intense. And like what we were saying earlier during the Facebook Live feed about balance, about the finding the balance between, you know, really intense comics and comedy. I think Berserk needs the comedy because there are volumes I simply cannot get through. They are so intense and violent and hard to get through and sad. I mean, the horrible things happen to these characters, and yet if the comedy's there, I'm good. You know, I just went through a whole chapter where this entire fleet of people I learned to love were killed, and they're never coming back. Oh, but this fairy just farted. That's pretty funny. Like, so I know it's not traditionally comedy, and I would imagine a lot of fans would agree with me that it's actually one of the funnier comics I've ever read, because much like gallows humor, I feel like you laugh harder when you're looking for it, when you're sad. Like if you're at a funeral, and this is going to sound horrible, but if someone makes a joke to me at a funeral, I'm going to laugh extremely hard because I'm such in a state of sadness and depression and like respect, and then someone will say something funny and I'll be like,
that release.
It's a release. Thank you. That's a great way of saying it. So Berserk to me is such a great comedic release. I wouldn't say it's mostly comedy, but that's a great way of saying it.
There's also something to be said for like the irony of it not belonging there.
Oh, it so doesn't.
Like it's so out of place that it just exaggerates that joke. Like if someone slips on a banana peel,
it's ridiculous.
In a book like that, that's the funniest joke ever.
And like in much anime, you'll see the kind of typical beauty bishonen kind of gorgeous characters, and then all of a sudden they'll have big silly eyes or the snot dripping out, and that this comic doesn't look like it, or manga doesn't look like it has that sort of drawing style, but it does from time to time to really break up the monotony. I shouldn't say monotony, but the intensity of the violence. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So I think you'll like it. I'm afraid to tell you and start reading it, and then you'll think differently of me.
Be like, wow,
Brittany. She's into some weird stuff, but I love Berserk. Yeah. Highly recommend it.
Is something that no one has ever said.
So actually, let's get into a couple more of your picks, and then I want to make sure that we get to some questions. And also, we have a long stream because y'all were amazing on Twitter. We got I asked what your favorite funny comics are, and we got I think almost 70 responses. So I'm gonna do as many as I can.
Well, I've already talked about
Howard the Duck.
But I'm just gonna go through the list here.
And for the record, there are characters on the DC side that are some. We were talking about the little
Hitman. So we've got a couple of questions. I was going to save that until the end. I can jump to it now.
We'll save it to the end.
You sure?
Yeah, go.
All right. So
you guys are arguing like a married couple.
Stop trying to set me up with your husband. He's very nice.
We are not.
All right, I'm just.
We're not. We're not.
We're show married.
Yeah. She's my show wife.
I love it.
So Afterlife with Archie. I don't want to get into any of it except to say that
this is not how I thought Archie comics would come up in our humor and comics discussion.
No,
right?
I know. But here, let me throw this out. Like I've read some Archie. It doesn't grab me.
Oh, man.
It just doesn't. And that's
Little
not to say it's
girl
like
was
good.
Into it.
And if you guys can sell me on it, I'll go back and revisit it and read some more. I know Mark Waid took it over. As of a couple years ago, and I love Mark Waid,
but
so I should give it a chance. But what makes this laugh is a laugh to me, at least, is that it's Archie in a zombie apocalypse. Like the irony of like it would be the same thing as like putting the Flintstones in a zombie apocalypse. Like,
well, we were just talking about that earlier.
There's literally a book called Scooby Apocalypse right now. If anyone's read it, tell us how it is because I haven't actually read it yet.
Yeah, but
is this in the same line as Archie versus Predator? Because
this was I think the first time they took Archie out of his original genre.
Okay. Well, no, they had done like a Punisher versus Archie one shot. There's an Archie versus Predator, a couple-parter.
So funny.
Like every once in a while, the company will try one of these crazy things. This is the first one that's sort of like, and it's interesting that you bring this book because there are funny moments in this book. But like what we couldn't believe when this book came out was like how legitimately scary it was and how legitimately emotionally involving. Like my coworker cried over one of these issues.
Oh wow!
And I'm not laughing because there's anything wrong with crying. I'm laughing because he can't believe he cried over an Archie comic. Wow. And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, but like for me, it's just like Archie doesn't belong in this situation.
Yeah.
So like every single page, as scary as it might be or whatever else, is similar to Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is a comedy.
Yeah.
You still cry at it when like he has to, no spoilers, but like
for Shaun of the Dead.
like
It's a zombie movie.
yeah, but like when he's with his mom for those last
Yeah.
but you're still like 2 seconds later you're laughing. So like for me, this is kind of in that similar sort of framework where it's just like he doesn't belong fighting. Like he should not have to decide if he's going to murder his
There's
dad.
something deeply weird about
It's like
watching. Yeah, but weird in a funny way.
Would that be like ironic absurdity? Like maybe like if we could make that up. I don't know if that's a term, but because it's certainly ironic, but it's certainly absurd. Like at the same time, so
Yeah, absurdly ironic.
Absurdly ironic or ironically absurd.
I love it.
I don't know which way. This. So I went to your, like I said this on Facebook Live earlier, but if you weren't watching, man, my hair is so, I need to get a haircut. Thank you, mirror camera. So I went to your shop last night, Amy, and you weren't there, which is, it always makes me sad when you're not there. But you were here, so it made total sense.
You sure you guys aren't?
Stop it! Stop shipping us. We're already shipped.
It's so cute.
We're already shipped. Stop it.
You guys are canon.
Yeah, we're canon.
Yeah.
We're an alternate universe. What if? We're canon.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
We're the
Sorry, I'm gonna keep
1610
talking
and we're
if
the
I don't shut up.
616.
Why do you like this book?
We're not ultimate married. No. I'm sorry.
As I said that, I was like, I hope no one picks up on Ultimate Married. And then you did. So I went to your shop and your friend that works there, Eric, I believe.
Yes.
I was like, hey man, like I had already picked up a couple books that I wanted to read, but I was like, hey, what are some funny books that you love that I should read? And this is the book that he pointed out, and I read it last night. And it is, oh my god, we can do side by side?
Whoa!
When did we do this?
So advanced. Oh my god.
When did we do this?
That's cool.
Ooh. Hey everybody, I'm not Louisa yet.
Joke's over.
Okay.
Sorry.
And scene.
So this book is more or less like it's kind of making light of like blaxploitation.
It's drawing
of the
on
70s.
the tropes
It's drawing on the tropes of blaxploitation
and comics.
and just like blowing them up. So like, and like the common tropes of like blaxploitation are he's like one bad mother, like
Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth. It's like that kind of stuff where he's just this badass character, but he's like badass to like an infinite degree. To like there's
badass.
And Jim wrote the I guess he did it with Brian Maruka.
But it seemed absurd to me too.
Oh,
like
it's
just completely insane.
absurd.
Yeah.
Like there's one thing where like
he's doing the styles appropriately for the stories he's telling, essentially.
Yeah.
You can see the sort of like he's aping old styles in this way, and then he's got the introduction here. This is the sort of like his comic book cover, essentially. So he's using the appropriate stylistic devices to go with the story he's chosen to tell.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the writer or the artist, but I want to read everything they've done because I was laughing so hard at that book, and that like really speaks to me too. Like making fun of like genre stuff, like blowing that out of proportion. Like there's the Princess of Venus, who's like the sexiest being in the universe, comes to Earth to turn all men into her slaves. And she all of a sudden feels the presence of aphrodisiac and cannot resist his charm, and has to fly to where he is to get like to court him, and then he ends up courting her. She's like, "Wait, you're not falling for my powers." Oh, but I'm falling for yours. And he's like, damn right, lady. Like,
I'm willing to bet there's a soundtrack that would
there's
go
gotta
along
be.
with
There's
this. Like
got to
somewhere
be.
someone's created like a Spotify playlist that you have to listen to while
fake
reading.
animated series that they sort of... This is what it would have looked like had they gotten a cartoon series in the late
From
70s, early
Adult
80s
Swim.
based on this.
yeah, Adult Swim picked this up now. But like they also like the art style is from the 70s. It's completely copied. Like even like the color scheme
Yeah, it's all muted.
is all like muted. Like they're having problems with printing. Like they haven't invented those processes yet. The pages look like they're yellowed and folded in some places.
That's so cool. I
So it's
love
a
that.
genre and era parody that uses those elements in really smart ways.
In incredibly smart ways, and I could not recommend this book highly enough. I was laughing so hard. It's from Ad House.
Jim Rugg and Brian Maruca. Jim Rugg is the one I always remember because the art is recognizable, but I don't know exactly what the breakdown was.
He doesn't have a clear origin. Every single story starts with a completely different origin story. So like this one is, by day he cleans up your office, at night he cleans up your streets. Introducing Alan Diesler, aka the Aphrodisiac, a mysterious man from a faraway land, the original, unbeatable, irresistible, smooth, dark chocolate brother bitch. But then here we get while attending a lab demonstration on the safe handling of nuclear waste, janitor Alan Diesler was bitten by a common cigarette pimp that had been infected with atomic radiation. The freak occurrence imbued Diesler, who was a teenager at the time, with the proportionate speed and strength of a spider. Jim Rugg and Brian Maruca present Aphrodisiac.
Oh my God.
So they're just throwing every trope they can think of into this thing. And it's probably going to have some of your mileage may vary qualities, but it's really funny.
Yeah. Owen Nixon's in part of it. It's I highly recommend.
Jim Rugg has a character named Street Angel, who is a little girl who skateboards and is terrifying, and she's getting her own book again coming soon, and I'm very excited.
You were talking about that earlier, yeah.
So now here, I think that this only exists in graphic form. I don't think that there were ever.
I don't think they ever did monthlies
issues
for that. No, but they make it look like there were in the
and they have so many different covers and stuff, like fake covers all the way throughout. But it's from Ad House Books. When you can buy it on their website or in House of Secret.
Yeah.
So I've got a few more, but before I keep just bogarting everything, do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I'm just gonna show these. I'm gonna do these at once. These are one of my two current favorite comedy books
no
right now.
No one has ever taken those two books together and been like, you know what's great?
Welcome to the inside of my brain.
Yep. What's funny is that she makes that joke that's pretty dead on. So, that is the inside of your brain.
Natasha Allegri, who I believe was a storyboard artist for Adventure Time, also a great Twitter person to follow. This started off as a web series. There was a Kickstarter, a lot of people donated to it, became its own web series, I believe, on Frederator. And it got turned into a comic, and I love it. It's kind of like a magical girl has a cat, she goes to space, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's a really great, funny comic, and it's very like awkward girl can't get a guy, but she's a superhero and does all these great things in space with the puppy cat.
It's once again like it's a voice that's very hard to describe, but that comes through very clearly.
Correct, and I'm certainly not. I don't have a big enough vocabulary to describe it. Same thing with Preacher. Preacher is one of my favorite comedic, and again, it's so not appropriate to talk about in comedy.
Preacher is like mature content warning all day long on this book. Your
Every single
mileage
page
will
of it.
vary for this.
Yeah, correct. And preparing for the show today, I realized that Garth Ennis Garth Ennis is my favorite comedy writer, without even meaning to be. I don't think he means to be a comedy writer, but between Hitman, one of DC's comic books that's very funny about a superhero hitman that lives in Gotham, and Preacher, and you had just mentioned earlier, The Boys.
The Boys.
His stuff goes so dark and so real and raw and intense. And then, Cassidy will make a joke about the size of his wiener, like 2 minutes later. It's very like... Again, it's kind of the gallows humor thing. So between being Puppy Cat and Preacher, welcome to my brain.
So. Well, I think I studied a lot of sketch and improv and just comedy writing in general. And a lot of times what I've discovered is that comedy comes from, for the most part, like the core of a particular narrative, the comedy comes from one of two different places. Either the comedy grows out from the character and the things that the character does, says, they're like... habits, foibles, all those things, that's what makes you laugh. Or it comes from the top down where the story is just ridiculous or absurd. It's kind of what we were saying with Hitchhiker's Guide versus Squirrel Girl. Preacher, I think, is like a perfect blend of both of those, where the situation is absurd, but all of the characters are also absurd. Like, it's just absurdity at its best.
And they're a great ensemble cast, too, for sure.
I think, like, that, a lot of my favorite stuff is right in that balance, where, like, it's in the world, but it's also in the characters, because they're characters who could only exist in that world.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a good way of saying
they grow from the world and the voice, and then they express it in what they say and do.
Like, that's one of the things about Breaking Bad, just to not talk about comics for a second, but Breaking Bad had some of the most legitimately funny oh my god,
Yeah.
what kind of moments?
Yeah, messed up. Yeah.
Followed by, I have to stop watching the show for 2 weeks because I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean,
like
you'll
that-
see Walter like eviscerate a person in a vat of chemicals, and then 2 seconds later having to hold his baby, and she like vomits on him or something. Like being a dad, the
Yeah.
laugh of being a dad after just having murdered someone.
So like Breaking Bad, if you could turn Breaking Bad up to a 10,
That's
that would be Preacher.
I agree.
Like in
Yeah.
terms of its absurdity and character, like falling in love with characters
Yeah.
and the
violence,
world around it and violence,
and,
that would
yeah.
be Preacher.
They also
like, yeah.
you meet these very larger than life supporting cast characters who like are, if the three main characters are all sort of versions of humanity that you might recognize but heightened,
Yeah.
the people around them in some cases are like
such a great
cartoonishly
thing to
bizarre
say. Yeah,
and,
totally.
and like
Yeah.
it's interesting where
There's so much I want to say and can't, but if you haven't read Preacher and you are 18 and above and won't get mad at me, you should start reading Preacher.
I've been my attempts to reread Preacher have been very interesting because it is one of my favorite books of all time, and there are times where I pick it up to sort of reread it, and I'm just like, I'm kind of mad at you. I don't know how I
it's
feel
intense.
today.
Yeah,
But I still have all this love for these characters.
same. And that's it for me.
So let me just throw these out. I hate Fairyland.
I haven't read this. What is this? I know it's
so-
Scotty Young, which is awesome.
All right, so Scotty Young, great. Like he's the guy who draws like all those ridiculous Marvel
Babies and
and stuff like
He's
that.
done a lot
Does
of
he
alternate
does-
covers with Marvel versions, and he
Yeah.
also for years was writing and drawing the Marvel official adaptations of the Oz books by L.
Yes,
Frank Baum.
that's right.
And so he spent
Okay.
years sort of doing totally like earnest, not satirical, but like really wonderful, engaging, whimsical, like world of Oz explorations in this series of adaptations.
That makes
in
perfect
comic
sense.
book
I
form.
recognize
Yeah.
that now.
And then apparently he had some steam to work off.
Very much so. So he creates this adorable little girl named Gertrude. I'm covering this page because I don't want you to see it just yet. But here's Gertrude. She's an adorable little girl who, well, screw it, you can see it. So she's this adorable little girl at the age of 8. She's like, I wish I could go to Fairyland. And Fairyland swallows her whole and says, come on to Fairyland. And she gets there and finds out that the rule is Fairyland will allow one little girl or one little boy entrance into their land one at a time. And once they find the key and get out, yay, you got to go to Fairyland, and now the next little boy or girl can come in. Well, unfortunately for Fairyland, Gertrude cannot find the key, and she gets stuck in Fairyland for 27, 30 years.
God.
Like, I think she's 37
that's
in this
so
book.
funny.
So she's basically like Kirsten Dunst in
Yeah.
Interview with the
Does
Vampire.
her body not grow with her?
Her body doesn't grow.
Oh my
She's
God.
stuck as an 8-year-old girl, and she can't die
Yeah.
because she's a guest or a visitor,
God.
but she
now she's
can
like-
kill everyone else, and she hates it. She hates how absurd it is. She hates how hard she's stuck there.
Do they point out at what age she started hating it? Is it immediate, or is it like,
No,
all right, I'm 12,
like
I kind of hate
within
this
3
now.
pages, it's she's 8, and then it skips to her 30 years later. She's like, F
they
this
don't-
land.
yeah.
F this land, the hardest
So,
it's
time
ever been
travel.
effed. She hates it, and the princess of Fairyland, or queen of Fairyland, is like Claudia. She lives in
Claudia.
a cloud castle.
Yeah. I love how uninspired on purpose.
Yeah, on
those
purpose,
names
all
are.
the names
yeah,
are.
Like,
and
I'm Cat.
She's
Katia.
like, and here's your travel companion. I give you 2 gifts. Your travel companion, and he's basically like a flying grasshopper kind of guy.
Aw, cute.
Like a cute little bug.
Like a conscience which she will ignore.
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
And so she gives her that and a map of Fairyland. Here he is. I can't remember his name. It's been a while, but there it is. There's her cute little companion there.
Oh,
I love the
cute. Yeah,
split screen
he's
Doom.
totally like
yeah,
Jiminy.
right there. And he's like, yay, we get to go on an adventure, and here's the magical map that tells us everything we need to go and see. And by the end of the book, he's just like, for real, kill me.
Please kill me.
Like, for real, kill me. This is the worst thing ever. He hates her, she hates him.
That's
but they're
funny.
stuck together because of
But
Fairyland.
but like, if I may, when I read books like that, even something as intense as Berserk and violent as Berserk is, I care about those characters. I care what happens to them. So is there anything in this book that makes you care about the main girl or or is it just completely absurd for the sake of absurdity?
So absurd.
Okay.
It is just so completely absurd that you almost don't care that you aren't in love with it.
So you relinquish the care and you're fine with it.
In this case, it's this world, right? It's not that you're like, it's growing organically out of her character and
exactly. It's just the absurdity of story.
Watching this absurdity.
Okay.
Which is like speaks directly to me. Like I am the most absurd like if you've seen any of the recent signal boosts, like hint, like Liam O'Brien's coming up
it's pretty silly,
so absurd and dumb. Like that is so my humor, and that's exactly what I Hate Fairyland is. And I didn't think that I would love it as much as I did. I was like, I'll pick it up. This looks fun.
Awesome, can't wait to read it.
So yeah, I fell in love with it. Though I will say, going back to the character, there's like one part where it happens later in the book where I was like, oh no, how's she gonna get out? Like, oh no. And then, but like, I also cared for this other character. It's like, but I also want that character to get out. Oh no, like I'm actually.
So you do find yourself.
I was surprised that I found myself actually caring.
Cool.
For the character, yeah. So I can't speak highly enough about that, and I've talked for long enough. So.
Oh, we have so many things that we want to get to.
Go for it. Because we still have questions, and it's 1:25.
Yeah, you brought this in, which made me really happy because I had forgotten it, and it is not only one of my very favorite things, but an overwhelming choice from Twitter.
I've never read it.
It's really good. You would like it.
I think you're, just guessing, but I think you're going to dig it.
Cool.
This book is called Giant Days. It is written by John Allison. This first volume is illustrated by Lissa Trayman. Max Sarin takes over from volume 2 on. And this is a thing, I wrote about this for Geek and Sundry, and I've talked about it sort of ad nauseum. But for those of you who have not heard this spiel a million times, Giant Days is the story of 3 college roommates, very different girls, who sort of get paired together and become friends. And it's sort of, in that way, a standard narrative. But it is unique from anything else you will read because of John Allison's comedic voice, which is so difficult to describe. It is one of those things that, like, you know it. This is his book, Bad Machinery, which he is someone, he writes and draws webcomics that he's been doing he's going on 20 years now.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think he's hit 20 yet, but
wow.
He's had a series of comics, first Bobbins, then Scary Go Round, then Bad Machinery, that are all set in sort of interconnected little British town, like a little British town with interconnected sets of characters, but that he plays out in sort of one strip at a time. And there is this dry and whimsical, which aren't things you should be able to combine, sense of humor to his characters and his world that are instantly recognizable and like nothing else. There's just something John Allison about it, and you know it as soon as you start reading it.
You said they're all interconnected, so characters are on the same universe in that way?
You don't need to read any of them to read any other ones.
Okay.
But there's, like, there are kids going to sort of late junior high, early high school in this, and one of their teachers is a side character from his strip years ago because everybody's aging.
Oh, cool.
But, like, she was one of the main characters in an early incarnation.
So he has kind of his own, like, extended universe.
He's got his own little village that's just been growing for, like...
That's neat.
And it's...
I want to be him now.
He uses, in his regular books, he employs some supernatural or sci-fi elements, but it's always sort of as this, like, weird, as just, like, part of village life.
It's just, like, part of it. It just goes... No, there's, like, not an explanation necessarily.
Not really. It's not like we're going to expose the secrets of the underlying magic, because it's sort of, like, that would ruin it. And there's... Like, I love things that are sort of too cute and precious, but there are a lot of folks who are sort of like, that is too, like charming things turn them off. And John Allison can get to those people, and I love that about it, because there's, like... Everything is sort of adorable. Nothing is cynical or vicious, but it's never precious. It's always like, it always feels fresh and surprising. And so Giant Days, to get back to it, is him teaming in print. The same very sharp editor who stole Ryan North, Shannon Waters, over at Boom, has an imprint called Boombox. And she, I think, is the one who was like, John Allison, please come do paper comics. He had done some short stories with these characters, but he wasn't using them regularly in his online work. And so they paired him with a Disney animator named Lissa Trayman, and we get this one of the most perfect page ones I think you will ever read. Whatever's the best place to put that. There we go. You meet all 3 of our main characters on this page. You just instantly get a sense of their personalities and the relationship they're about to have. And these 3 playing off of each other with mostly realistic situations, really. Like, they deal with regular college stuff. I mean, it's British college stuff, so they can drink. That's one of those, like, we used to keep it on our all ages section, and someone was just like, and it's like, well, it's college
culture.
Stories.
Yeah.
But I remember, because I didn't have to. I got to when I was did the Eisners last year, because that was nominated for an Eisner.
Yes, and you actually brought this in, so I will let you talk.
Well, no. Like, I'm glad that you, like, I really enjoyed it a lot. I didn't remember a whole lot about it. I was just like, I really like this book. I'm going to bring it in. Yeah. But I do, like, now that you're bringing up the first page, I remember reading this first page and thinking, well, this guy's a genius.
Yeah,
like,
just the way he introduced it.
Just because, like homeschooled and naive, Daisy Wooten is 50% hair and 100% not ready for this mean old world. You know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
One, like, not even a paragraph. It's a sentence. And, like, as someone who wants to be a writer and is trying to be a writer and gets paid to write some stuff from time to time, like, that's not easy to do. To, like, not only boil a character down in one sentence, but in your tone and give, like, an exact... Like, I know exactly who Daisy Wooten is now. You know? Like, that's not easy to do. But on top of that, like, this is just... It's just college stuff. It's just dating. Like, there's no super heroics. There's nothing extravagant going on. But, like, the way that they encapsulate the world and show
sick.
emotion...
That's like
and
one episode is like, they get sick. Or one issue. Like,
they get sick.
But it's hilarious.
But it's great. Like, that's how they draw and narrate getting sick is this page. Like, it's great. So I love this book, and it was like writing for the Eisners and trying to make jokes for Barrowman was just like so fun. But yeah.
So yeah, John Allison is one of my absolute favorite comedic voices, and this book is significantly transformed by the influence of artist Liz Drayman and Max Sarin following up. But like they've maintained this miraculous chemistry, and it was weird to think like somebody else drawing John Allison, is it gonna work, or is his peculiar style gonna
a particular style up until this?
Because he usually draws his own stuff, and it's a different style. It's still very expressive. But you can see that he's doing something different.
Interesting.
Than like
than a Disney.
Than this sort of incredibly sophisticated while still looking very simple work that they're doing here. So cannot say enough good things about Giant Days and John Allison's other work.
Especially if you're looking to get into stuff that's not superheroes or like sci-fi, like that's 3 girls in college dealing with the world.
In Bad Machinery, you'll have things where like they're investigating a haunted sports stadium or that sort of thing, where like you will have some of his work does have these sort of like sci-fi or supernatural themes, but Giant Days is straight ahead. Like,
cool,
hilarious, comedically heightened, but not supernatural.
So it's 1:30.
Yeah, we have so much to get through. Okay.
What else? Do you have some big ones that you want to get to? Should I go through some questions and comments yet?
Well, what I want to do is see how quickly I can run through our Twitter suggestions.
Go for it. Do it.
This is going to be super rapid fire.
While you're doing that, I'm going to have
to all of the
Lindor
incredibly many people who responded to our call for your favorite funny books.
By the way, my wife just asked me if I was seeing anybody. I think.
Anybody? You come here often?
Yeah, I come here all the time.
I think they're hitting it off, guys.
I come here all the time.
Well,
come here a lot.
I'm not married, so.
Oh, would you like to be?
Sure.
Would you like to be?
Sure.
Hey, look at this. Oh, we're married.
You guys,
we're the worst.
It's gross. It's gross.
We're gross.
It's gross. All right, Twitter.
We're gross. We're told by a lot of our friends that we're gross. And I agree. We're gross.
So that's amazing. I have not mentioned it. I'm just throwing this out there because I left it up here to silently be here. Kate Beaton is the first and only woman to win for a solo work the Eisner Award for Best Humor Publication, which was A, way too late in coming, but B, also richly deserved because she is one of the funniest humans on the planet.
Hark a Vagrant is so
Hark a
funny.
Vagrant is her webcomic. Many of you will have seen it in different... Oh, can I put the Wonder Woman F-bomb
go for
up?
it. Yes. We're preparing you for an F-bomb.
F-bomb coming in.
These are 2 of my favorite things, which are, 1, her doing a little riff on superheroes. She mostly does, like, history comics, literature comics, And then, so this is based on old illustrations from engravings, which have so much sass and attitude to them. And this is her take on Wonder Woman, and it's the funniest.
So funny. That one got shared so much when it first came out. I remember on my Facebook and everywhere I went. It was very funny.
Because she's just got a way of looking at the world and a way of illustrating it that's so unique and so recognizable. Here's her doing funny comics about Julius Caesar. She does books, she does history, she does whatever strikes her fancy. She actually lately on her online has been doing a lot of sort of quiet family stories, which because she's just a genius are so affecting and funny, and it's just you and your mom talking about haircuts or whatever. But it's got the same level of insane genius. So she writes and draws these. It's called Hark a Vagrant. There are 2 print collections, and I cannot say enough good things about it. And now I'm going to do what I promised. And
Twitter.
Y'all turned out 68 responses.
Holy.
Okay, so the first response was from Kelly Knox, who's been writing our recaps with our recommendations every week.
Kelly is amazing.
Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
And her response was Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Makes my day every single month. So thank you. If you weren't already our favorite, you would be now. Rick Bud, my Bud, says Gru the Wanderer. Sergio Aragonis is a classic writer-artist. You would recognize his style. If you don't know the name Sergio Aragonis, you would recognize him anyway. He's done a ton of work for Mad Magazine. He has an original character named Gru the Wanderer, who is a parody of sort of Conan tropes.
I know this. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Just very funny. And Rick also shouts out Squirrel Girl and Hellcat.
Yes.
Patsy Walker Hellcat is unfortunately wrapping up, but our buddy Kate Leth writes it, and Brittany Williams draws it, and over at Marvel, it's another one of these sort of finding a different tone within the Marvel universe, and it makes me laugh a lot. Doug Ebach says The Middleman. Max Ham Fairy Tale Detective, which I need to look into because it sounds fantastic, and Hero Happy Hour. Minswe sent me his favorite comedians because I was not clear with my wording.
I saw that. Yeah, the stand-up comedians.
It was Donald Glover, Dimitri Martin, Catherine Madigan.
Good choices. To be fair.
All solid choices.
Yeah, just
So I love that we immediately start getting reprints. Joe Sando, friend of the show, says Gru the Wanderer and Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Tabletop Owlbear, longtime friend of the channel, gives us Knights of the Dinner Table, one of the all-time classic sort of geek culture funny comics.
I haven't heard that one. I haven't seen that one.
It's exactly what it sounds like. Knights of the Dinner Table. It's all about a tabletop role-playing group. It's been going since the 90s
that's
at least.
awesome.
Rex Libris and The Flaming Carrot, another very important sort of self-aware comics character.
Yeah.
And then Disco Fish said 100%, not sure 100% counts, but Hark a Vagrant. It, of course, counts. Comics are comics. I cast a wide net there. And then we get our first of many, many shout-outs for Rat Queens.
Yeah, totally.
Which, while not explicitly a comedy, is very, very funny.
Yeah.
So Persnikov shouted out any Rat Queen scene with Betty using drugs, which are most Betty scenes. You can tell from the book being called Sass and Sorcery that you're going to be in for some funny as well as other stuff. And then we get a mainstream DC shout out. Chris Campbell says Super Sons, the book that's about Batman and Superman's kids, has been putting a smile on my face every issue so far.
Is that a current?
It's running right now, and it's been a big hit. It's 2 issues in, I think.
Exposing my ignorance there, but now I know.
Yeah,
By
well,
asking the
it's
question, I've learned an answer.
See? It's amazing. Esmond Chong says, my main 2, Brian Clevenger and Scott Wagner's Atomic Robo. This is a big fave. It's, again, like off the beaten path, but it's sort of funny steampunk stories. He's a robot created by Nikola Tesla, who sort of runs around like...
That's cool.
I read that. I liked it.
Yep.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Good suggestion. I forgot that I read that.
And also, Garfield. From Esmond Chong.
No.
I mean, valid.
No. Just kidding.
Chaotic Core gives us Gold Digger, another long-running, like a lot of the comedy books are just sort of people doing their own thing like for decades. And this is the case with Gold Digger. Fred Perry's been writing and drawing it. I think Damien shouted it out last week, I think, or was talking about it because he boosted it on his Signal boost. But Gold Digger is a long-running comic book comedy. Let's see, Catacor also had Girl Genius, another sort of steampunk one that's now being published primarily online. We should get into like steampunk and webcomic, but there's reasons we should return to all of these. And our first shout out for Deadpool from Chaotic Core.
Yeah. Deadpool's a character.
Yeah.
And he's funny, you know?
He's pretty funny, that Deadpool.
He's got jokes. And a brand new addition to the Marvel canon, confusing to many people, but beloved by many as well, Gwenpool. She has nothing to do with Spider-Gwen, and she has nothing to do with Deadpool. She's just Gwenpool.
Yeah.
The Unbelievable Gwenpool, I think is her official title. So Matt Malone says the section in Kelly Sue DeConnick's Captain Marvel with Rocket Raccoon versus the Flurkin Cat.
Oh, that was great.
This is one of those shout-outs to the moments within standard superhero narratives where you find those comedy can be really, really fun things. The first of a couple shout-outs for Next Wave from Jose Mondragon. Warren Ellis and Stuart Immonen. Next Wave Agents of Hate. Okay, Walmart Slayer says DC's Dial H series they did in 2012. This is one I haven't read yet that I actually was meaning to. Lots of goofy one-off heroes and a team based on a house. Which sounds really exciting. Tim Madden says, how many do you want me to list? Young Avengers Volume 2. He means I think you mean the Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey run. I love both of them. Raccoons Volume 1, Wicked and Divine. Makes you laugh. Easily the funniest comic ever, says Keybrains, which is going to sound like high praise, right? Is Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh, which you guys might both recognize. Clean All the Things?
Oh,
yes.
That's Hyperbole and a Half. She's a decent candidate for funniest comic ever.
Oh my god, I had no idea.
Gosh, okay.
There's a
I love that I learned stuff on the show that I host.
I mean, such is life.
I love it.
Life.
It's like Hyperbole and a Half is once again like humor's so much about voice and viewpoint, and like that comic is.
I'm surprised no one's mentioned like the oatmeal yet, or God.
About to land on questionable content though, if we're in webcomics land.
Right. Yeah.
Captain Tiny says questionable content, which is a comic by Jeff Jacks. I don't know how to say your name, Jeff Jacks. I'm sorry. I've been reading your comics since like the year 2000, and I have no idea.
I believe it's Jacques.
Jeff.
I don't know.
Jeff Jacques. I'm so
being
sorry.
funny on our funny show.
Questionable content is consistently one of the funniest things I've ever read. That is one of the like titans of webcomics. Luke Green says webcomics El Goonish Shive by Dan the Shive, which I need to read. Dominic Deegan, Oracle for Hire, which I need to read, and Girl Power by Girl Power Comic. And I'm gonna have to investigate all three of these because I've heard of two of them and I didn't even know Girl Power, but I'm gonna have to look into it. Gavin Hayes just picked up and loved the recent Neil Gaiman gothic horror parody, Forbidden Brides of the Faceless Slaves in the Secret House of the Night of Dread Desire.
That's awesome.
Which is a great callback to our horror episode because it's based on all those long anthology titles. Mashed up into apparently one perfect package.
How long do you think it took him?
You had me at Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. How long do you think it took him?
Took him to finish, to finally land on that title.
How many
adjectives? Were they drinking absinthe in a haunted house when they did it? Were they watching What We Do in the Shadows and came
drinking
up with it?
absinthe in a haunted house?
Please, cartoonists, do the scene of them coming up with that title so we can just go full circle with this. Billy D at Real Silly Owl says Squirrel Girl is the best of everything.
Damn
we didn't even force you guys to say this. You
I'm
just all have great taste.
Putting it out there.
Paper Girls makes me laugh occasionally. Always have a smile on my face. Snobby comic book guy who hopefully is being ironic and not actually snobby, but we're you're part of the family either way. Says Lenore, the cute little dead girl by Rowan Dirge.
Yeah.
A fantastic pick and another sort of self-published or independently published black and white comic that
wildly popular.
It's funny
Darren
how
shouted it out, right?
Darren DePaul shouted it out in Signal Boost.
That's right.
We like funny things.
It's so funny how much you forget you've read stuff and loved that stuff because you read so much other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Lenore,
much stuff.
Lenore the Dead Girl is one of those. I was like, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I really do like that. That is a good one.
Those are conversations I love where people are like, I don't really read comics, and the more you talk, they're like, except I love that, and I love that, and I love that. And I was see, you already love comics.
You love comics already.
Good job. So at Communion Nimrod, Carrie shouted out Giant Days. It's so cute. I love it. Another Atomic Robo shout out from Rabid Ronnie. I'm just enjoying. There were so many of y'all, and you had such consistent picks. I'm excited. Thanks for letting me just take over this broadcast to read tweets. Anthony Vanover says, Saga, TV heads, and Lion Cat. Saga will break your heart. I'm adding that part. But, he says, so much weird, random, funny moments, but also a lot of heart and emotion mixed into the weirdness.
Yeah.
And this was, I deliberately, I wanted to phrase my question not as, what's your favorite humor comic, but which comics make you laugh. Because it gets all these answers from, the ones that are just gag-a-day comic strips, like Garfield all the way to Saga.
And Saga's got some great funny moments.
Really funny.
It really does. Small Lady shouts out the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl and Lumberjanes. The All Ages book about girls fighting monsters at scout camp. also co-created by Shannon Waters, the editor of the Boombox titles, who is just like, thank you for everything you're doing for comics, Shannon. You're the best. But it was, of course, like Noelle Stevenson, Grace Ellis. There were 4 co-creators, and I'm forgetting one. I'm very sorry. But a lot of folks contributed to making Lumberjanes the amazing thing that it is. Thordak is Dead says, I really did enjoy Barry Ween by Judd Winnick. It had some tender moments as well as the jokes. And then the first of several, and I loved seeing this, shout-outs, for Justice League by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, with art by Kevin Maguire. This is what's known as kind of the Bwahaha era. Mm-hmm. They did a book called Justice League International and have returned to it on several times. It's the funny Justice League, mm-hmm. but it also, like, there's a whole generation of fans who bonded really, really hard to that specific vision that had all of the action and all of the adventure, and you could take the character seriously, but, like, there was a friendship between Booster Gold and Blue Beetle in those, in those issues, which, like, people imprinted on this book in a way that I've always loved seeing. Mm-hmm. And I think I loaded this up. There is one very famous page from the Giffen Maguire Justice League International that Zach, you might have waiting over there. What is it called? It might be called One Punch. I'm gonna keep talking through this.
One Punch Man. Yeah.
There's a very famous moment where argumentative firebrand Green Lantern Guy Gardner has pushed Batman one step too far. And essentially sort of says, like, throw down with me right now. We're going to have it out. We're going to have it out.
Oh, there we go.
And it doesn't last long. Batman just punches him out. And the best part is that Black Canary walks in immediately after and goes, wait, what just happened? Did I miss it? Are you kidding?
Oh, God. Poor Black Canary.
So, this was just the, like, it has become one of the most famous moments just because of how everyone handles it. But, like, the book is more than just
She's
that.
like, no!
She's like, wah!
That's awesome.
One punch.
Batman belted him and I missed it. Yeah. So, good times with the Justice League. Let's see. The original Quantum and Woody from Nicholas. Scurvy Dogs, which I don't know. Street Angel, our boy Jim Rugg. Squirrel Girl. Sam and Max. I'm wondering if you mean Sam and Max the video game or Sam and Twitch the side characters from Spawn. I did not clarify.
I love that you knew either of them, though.
Sam and Twitch is getting their own TV series.
Apparently they are.
Courtesy of Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Really? That's cool. I like that guy.
He's a good guy.
I like that guy.
These were sort of comedic background. Again, a more serious work with, like, funny characters providing contrast that can then spin off into their
And they were kind of like window characters in a way too, where they're like, "What's going on? There's a demon guy. What?" Like, and that, like, that's sort of one of the things that I always learned doing comedy is that a lot of times the comedy isn't the funny thing that happened; it's the reactions that are funny. A lot of times it's the reactor.
It's not Guy Gardner getting punched; it's everybody
It's
like
everyone
it's the
going,
lead up, and then Black Canary being like, "Bah!"
I missed it. Yeah,
That's why, like, and
also him getting punched a little
in
bit.
groups like Abbott and Costello, Abbott got paid 60 to 65% of the 100% cut because it was harder to be the straight man, but he was the most important because anybody can be wacky and zany and funny. It takes someone like of a particular talent who can be like, I don't understand, like, and to sell that reaction.
But I also feel Costello needs a better agent.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but it was the same with the Three Stooges too.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they
Mo got the
screwed.
lion's share of that, and before that, Ted Healy, like, who it was Ted Healy and his Stooges, he got legit 70% of the cut.
Crazy.
And then the other three, the actual Three Stooges, split 10%.
Man, that's a whole depressing story on its own.
Wow, I did not know
You were
this.
so funny today with all your funny stories.
I think they're hitting it off, guys.
I think I'm back to not being married.
Wait, oh no, I
I'm
can't.
just kidding.
Oh, the heartbreak. Okay, Hurricane Me answered both versions of the question. Said Kumail Nanjiani for stand-up, Schlock Mercenary for comic stories.
Oh, and
another
both.
webcomic.
All right.
Vilna shouted out the Awkward Yeti, which I haven't looked up, but am going to because it sounds hilarious. Ashley Besser shouted out another Scotty Young book when he did a mini-series that was giant-sized little Avengers versus X-Men.
Oh,
yeah, the
I
Baby
did.
Avengers X-Men.
It
Yeah,
is
that's
so
it is
funny.
really cute.
Really
That
adorable. From
was
Secret Wars
really
2015.
It's 147.
No, Okay, I'm gonna race through these. Groot standalone, Rocket Raccoon standalone, Gwenpool, Mockingbird last year, another Rat Queens, another Lumberjanes, another Squirrel Girl, I Hate Fairyland, the early issues of Ms. Marvel, especially when she teams up with Wolverine and Totally Fangirls. I think I was gonna present one of those, but just read it. It's great. And then G. Flan, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat, Giant Days. Look, I know that I asked my timeline, so we're getting biased responses, but I still love how many of these come in. Margaret Taylor shouts out Nightwing comics as a DC Comics, any of the Nightwing comics have made her laugh on many occasions. I think because he's got sort of an awareness about things. Like, while he's not a comedy character, like, his perspective on things can lead to great humor in terms of how people react to stuff.
And that butt dough.
Yep. Ebert shouts out, I can't believe we haven't brought this up to now. Ben Edlund's original creation, The Tick.
I know! I've got
my
cat
God.
cosplay said Spoon!
Oh my God.
One of the all-time humor
Yeah.
comics. Again, just writing and drawing it yourself, you can put something into the universe that, like, is uniquely you and makes everybody very happy. Jerry Riedel shouts out the time Spider-Woman made Hulk make her a sandwich. Which was, look that up, that's hilarious. A shout out from Mark James Davies for the main Bastish, I don't know how to say it himself, Lobo. Thread the Barbarian, and Gobbledygook, which is spelled in a funny way. So just find, this thread is on my Twitter account. A lot of these. Kinesa shouts out What the from Marvel,
What the,
which is what we drew today's title from, a self-parodying series from the late 80s, early 90s.
I mean, this is not a what the, but it's a what if that's legitimately very funny. I was even like flipping through it before we started here. And like the first, they
have a tradition of doing these what-if stories of alternate versions of things, which eventually gave rise to the one Kinesa says shouting out, which is legit just parody, which was what the.
But like this one
is
is
a what if.
This is what if the watcher didn't watch the Marvel universe and like it just got completely out of hand. And one of the very first things is, what if the Fantastic Four were bananas? And it's just like, that's where we're starting. All right.
Someone got paid to do that.
And it's like, what if everyone who'd ever been an Avenger remained an Avenger? And you have like this mashup that's uncontrollable. Like it's so many Avengers. Like
so many.
And this was decades ago. There are so
this
many
is
more
like
now.
early 80s. Yeah, this is even worse. Like, it's even worse
Another
now.
of Talison's picks was, what if, I think 34, what if no one was watching The Watcher? Just look the cover up.
And there's also, keep going, I'm going to find this because I want to show off this page. It was really funny.
We will return to that. Luke Green shouted out Gold Digger by Fred Perry, Courageous Princess by Rod Espinosa, and Ranma 1/2 by Rumiko Takahashi. Mr. Nobody shouted out like the funny elements of a lot of stuff. Hickman's Transhuman, Garth Ennis's The Pro.
Oh my God! Yes,
that's inappropriate humor, but very, very funny. Ellis's Next Wave, another shout out for Next Wave, and of course, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, and then another Giant Days from Pike Nice Comics, and then Cadmandu calling back to the rich history of comics, and still some of the funniest stuff going. The old Harvey comics. The first comics they ever saw were Richie Rich, Casper, Sad Sack, and a handful of Harvey Comics characters. Secondhand from a neighbor. I was less than 10.
Oh, that's awesome.
And this, I make this joke a lot, but like Eric at the shop, the one comic that he can't help himself from stopping and reading when he buys in back issues, Little Lulu.
Really?
Those stories hold up so much better than you would think.
Really?
Like, they're just funny.
Yeah.
So Jason Paneo shouts out Least I Could Do, another webcomic. Horizon Zero John shouts out the current Transformers books being written by James Roberts. More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light. He says, overall, best books I've ever read, not just funny. Edward Chuck shouts out the graphic novel Delilah Dirk, which is an adventure story, but full of very funny stuff. I have just started these after years of being told how much I'm going to love them, and I'm preparing to tell everyone, like, you were right! They're awesome! And a shout out for the Flintstones. The current we talked about this on the show.
That surprises me.
But there's a bunch of Hanna-Barbera books being written by now, and one is being done as a social satire, which could have gone horribly wrong, but instead, people are eating up with a spoon. It's being written by Mark Russell, who did a book called Prez, which was a near-future sci-fi vicious satire on our culture that I was just cringing and laughing the entire time because it was like, oh God, it's so
cringe
true.
Laughing. You're crafling. Laughing.
Yep. We will get into that one more. Ricky Galetti has a shout out for Squirrel Girl and Giant Days and Gwenpool and Scott Pilgrim.
Oh yeah.
Which also
Pilgrim,
won
which
an
we didn't
award for humor. Like it's a I forgot to think of it because it's just a world that I followed and characters I love very much, but it's also hilarious. Super Mario Adventures, which hadn't occurred to me, but like a lot of all ages material. Bee and Puppy Cat and Next Wave.
Totally.
Hero Squared by Keith Giffen, J.M. Dave Mateus, and Ben Dunn's Ninja High School from Tony Poirier. Laura Neal, Moon Girl, and Devil Dinosaur over at Marvel right now.
That's a cute one.
And Tyler Boyce has a pick from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the Dark Horse comic. If only for Marn Griff Harrogriff. Quote, I am not an accessory, I am a mastermind. I don't know what the context for that is, but it sounds amazing.
Sounds great. Sounds very Dr. Doom.
Singing Badger has Giant Days, Bad Machinery, Young Avengers, Gilliam McKelvey, and Lumberjanes. Dave Gillum has Ambush Bug, the DC character. The Giffen DeMatteis JLA run with Blue and Gold, which is a reference to Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. 101 Deadpool 101 didn't even suggest Deadpool, just said, I know this is funny, but two of my favorite funny webcomics are Gone with the Blast Wave and Romantically Apocalyptic. Have not read. Sound amazing.
Yeah.
Eber 3 also adds Megaton Man, don't know that one, but Matt Blackwell, Ambush Bug, Giffen DeMatteis, McGuire, Justice League. I loved the number of shoutouts for that, which is why I keep reading them all individually. Sorry, guys. Your Red Dog, the Ambush Bug miniseries from the late 80s. There's a ripoff of Ninja Turtles in there called Big Fat Freaking Frog. That sounds amazing.
Big fat freaking
Colin Sayers in for Lumberjanes. I really should have counted these to see, like, sort of how it came in. Compel Bast has sent a classic comic strip from Scotland that always is a laugh. Ur Wooly. You find that link because I'm not going to be able to accurately sort of describe it to you, but that's in the thread, and it was, like, it made me laugh a lot, where I was like, it's all about Scottishisms, and it's great. Laura, some of the comedy in Ms. Marvel involving Loki, especially calling him a hipster Viking. And Disasteroid says that would have to be Lumberjanes. Amazing art style, great story. I love it. And the final one from Red Deck DM, Rat Queens.
Rat Queens.
Thank you for your patience. I got really excited because so many of you turned out for those. Like, the whole thread is on Twitter. Thank you all for your fantastic
So here's the panel
taste.
that I wanted to show off. It's What If, and it's what if the Watchers from all the dimensions watched all the other Watchers, and that's all they watched. And you can see it here. It's just like
each other.
They're all just watching each other, and each frame gets like smaller and smaller and smaller with all of them watching.
This one's taking a shower. What's
and then
going
you've got
on
like
there?
this crazy one
Elmer
here who's like
Fudd.
Elmer Fudd, and that like made me laugh out loud.
That's
It's
very
just like they're all just watching each other. It's, like, and that's their entire purpose. Anyway, that's a great what the.
And bonus shout out to Nimona because it was my favorite book of last year.
Also, I forgot to bring this up. It's a
web.
web comic, but now it's been collected, I think, in 2 volumes. Steve Lickman is legitimately one of the funniest, laugh out loudiest books I've ever read. It starts off, the first page is this barbarian comes into a dungeon and he's there to kill the Lich King. But the barbarian has had sex, so he's no longer a virgin and is therefore no longer virtuous enough to kill the Lich. And the Lich dismisses him. He's like, get out, just get out. And he's like, damn it, I really wanted someone to beat me this time.
That's funny.
And the whole thing becomes, are you just like,
I'm just
I love
squeezing
you.
him in.
The whole book becomes everyday life with Dungeons and Dragons monsters living in this dungeon, just doing their best to get by. There's a hipster vampire. He's Dracula. He's trying to be a hipster and stay young. And Steve Lichman is like, dude, just chill. It's cool. This is one of Brittany's favorites.
I'm going to throw some up too. We've got the first, technically the very first appearance of Rocket Raccoon.
In Marvel canon. His actual
He's my
first
favorite.
appearance.
That's one of my favorite comedic.
Marvel preview.
Do we
number
have
7.
any questions?
We got a lot, actually.
Yeah, very sorry, guys. I got excited about that Twitter thread.
Let me make sure that the computer is working. All right, here we go. Okay. What's the backstory of Wolverine and Squirrel Girl, says Squirrel Gnome.
In this...
I think in the current, stuff.
I think it's because you showed the panel where they were giving each other side eye when Squirrel Girl was working as the nanny.
Oh, we were talking about that.
Gotcha, yeah.
I don't know if they have much of a...
Yeah, I don't know.
Just kind
Squirrel
of...
defeated Wolverine previous to that appearance.
I would believe that.
Yep,
yeah.
Sax is saying she had previously defeated him,
I
and that
believe
sounds
that.
legit.
Yeah.
She
She is
backing her,
unbeatable.
she should not be able to win this fight days.
Yeah.
Let's see. What is the Brittany Matt ship name? Britta Matney. I'm going to say Bratney.
Bratney.
I'm gonna
You
say
guys, do you
Bratney.
think it's gonna happen? Hold on. Fangirl corner. These two, I think they have real chemistry. I think it could work out. Just we'll keep tabs on this, and we'll just compare notes and see what happens. Because, I think they'd be really good together. Okay.
Did you guys like the Preacher Show? Says Warrior 10.
I was underwhelmed. I didn't dislike it. I was just underwhelmed.
I watched the beginning and I was super intrigued, but I haven't actually caught up with the rest
That's
of it.
not a good thing. That means you didn't really care.
I enjoyed the whole
right?
show because I feel like it was setting up season 2.
Yeah, sure.
I'm excited for season 2.
I was very
Because of
excited by
season
the
1,
casting.
yeah.
same.
I really liked watching everybody in those roles.
So Squirrel Gnome says, "Come on, Matt, say it. X Factor. Peter David is legit one of my favorite authors, and I think he's legitimately very funny. And a lot of his comics, what he'll do is a lot of comics a lot of times will summarize the issues and the stories that have come before. What Peter David would do is say, here's what happened in X Factor previously. Here's what's going on in my life, by the way. My daughter just said this weird, wacky thing to me, and I'm very excited about it. And then the next month, he'd keep on with that story. I always love that. I love Peter David a lot. One of my favorite Multiple Man comics, not a comic, issues was an old X Factor in the 90s. They were being attacked, I want to say, by the Marauders, and this one guy was like starting to gouge his eyes out. Multiple Man. And he was like, I am going to regret doing this. And he punches inside of his mouth, and a dupe is like created inside of this guy and blows him up from the outside.
God.
And you see this other dupe just standing there covered in gore, just like, why did you do that to me? And he's like, I am so sorry. Anyway, we've got 1 minute. I am so sorry. You had so many things to say, but we had a lot of Twitter to get through. Amy, set up next week's show.
Next week, at last, Comics 101. We're going to start as close to the beginning as we can. We're going to be talking a little bit about if you're curious, if you want to read something in advance and you are interested, we highly recommend Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. But don't worry, we are not going to go as in-depth as all of that. It's just a lovely, readable book. And we're going to try and answer, make sure to please shoot at me any questions that you would really like to see answered. We will not get to everything about comics, but we want this to be our, if you are starting anywhere from the absolute beginning, tune in next week.
Yay!
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really, thank you.
So
hey, we're good. We're good.
We're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yay. We made it.
So,
I'm gonna get married. What'd you say?
Just kidding.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch.
It was happy for 2 seconds.
Really though, thank you for having me. It really meant a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me at Twitter at bwallach, WALLOCH.
Instagram.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm at the Matt Key on Twitter, and that's pretty much the only place you can find me.
And I'm Enthusi Amy, and we'll see you in the Funny Papers.
Oh!
Because it's comics, and this week it's appropriate. Thanks for watching Wednesday Club.
Bye bye.